Welcome to the Coachers Podcast. Coaches, athletes, parents, and fans, this is your vault for inspiration.
How's it going? This is Keanu Yamamoto with the Coachers Podcast. I'm here with Coach John Mannion, former head coach for Silverton High School and most recently Mountainside High School located here in Oregon. Coach, thanks for jumping on. Please tell us about your family, journey, background, progression, all that good stuff.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it. I love talking about, football. It's been a passion my whole life. I got into teaching and coaching, right out of college, age 23. Began my career in 1991 at Milpitas High School, which is located just outside of San Jose, California, near the 49ers stadium there. I was very fortunate to get with Kelly King, he was in his second year as a head coach, and he just stepped down a couple of weeks ago, but great position. School had about 3,000 students, very talented players there, and really a great place for me to begin a career in education and coaching. From there, I went to Foothill High School, which is in Pleasanton, California, which is about 30 miles from Milpitas. And really, our family had bought a home up there. My wife and I had bought a home up there, and we had one son and a daughter on the way. And so I ended up being at Foothill High School for 17 years, and that was a great run there. I was assistant coach at Foothill under Matt Sweeney, who again was a phenomenal coach. I became the head coach in 2007. I was also athletic director there. And then in 2010, our family moved to Silverton, Oregon, to Silverton High School, a town of about 10,000 people. Very much out of the box move, one that I sometimes can't believe we did. But again, another great experience there, kind of going into a small, more rural community. Made great lifelong friends, had some excellent, phenomenal teams, a great group of assistants that are still lifelong friends. And then in 2017, Mountainside High School was being built. It was becoming the sixth public high school in Beaverton, and they recruited me to come up there and begin the football program there and teach at the school, which I still do to this day. Again, a great experience, and really the idea that you were going to build a program from the beginning. We started with 9th and 10th grade, and then the next year we had a varsity team with no seniors, and then we eventually had all 4 grades in 2019. We had some really great moments at Mountainside, and felt super proud about establishing the culture there. But yeah, that add it all up, it's 36 years, and I feel very fortunate to have had 4 really different experiences, but also at each of the stops I was at, great groups of coaches I learned from, worked with, coached against. I think that's really kind of made me who I, am as a coach today. As far as family goes, 4 children. My oldest, Sean, 33, played football at Oregon State, later in the NFL, and is currently coaching with the Philadelphia Eagles. And I have 2 daughters, Katie and Megan, who are both civil engineers, living in Oregon, working as engineers. And then my youngest, Brian, he's a senior at Linfield University. He's played football and baseball at start. Now he's focused just on baseball. He's a pitcher for them, kind of finishing up his career there and graduating in a few months. So, again, one of the things too for me that I was really grateful for in my career is that it is a career where you really can include your family. And I felt like, all of my kids, from Sean, the girls, and Brian, were always at practice and very invested in what I was doing and the schools that we were at. So I feel very fortunate in that regard.
Yeah,
I guess
cool,
last
Coach.
thing I would say too, I'm sorry, is, one of the things I'm also grateful for is the 4 places that I coached were all distinctly different situations in terms of the size of the school, rural school, urban school, suburbs. And I feel like it was kind of validating that really, kids are kids, and in all the places. Obviously I, wasn't the same everywhere, but a lot of the same messaging resonated, at each of those stops along the way. So I found that kind of a cool thing too, that, if you believe in what you're saying and you have, values that, you feel strongly about, that in my case, thankfully, like at each of those spots, they hit home with a whole bunch of different kinds of kids.
Yeah, no doubt. I know your boys got Denison coming up here, huh?
They do have Dennis.
Number 1 team in the country?
Yeah, I know. I looked, they play them on the next 3 days, and I went and did a little, as a coach, you're still scouting. I went on their website and saw that they they beat Lewis and Clark yesterday, I think 22-4. So as the parent of a pitcher, I'm a little worried, but I'm sure it'll be fine.
Yeah, no doubt. You started Mountainside from the beginning. Can you kind of talk about just some of those challenges? I'm sure you expected some challenges, but what was some challenges that you didn't expect starting a new program?
Well, I guess there's a lot to it, really. In terms, one point I joked with the principal and AD. I said, I think you hired the wrong guy, because if you know me, like, I don't like uniforms and color schemes, and like, that's not really my focus. But so we had to really start from, you had basically nothing. And so kind of building, that was a really, logistically, I guess it was a lot. I think one of the things that was, fantastic about it was that first year we had a freshman team and a JV team. And so myself and our coaches coached both teams. So like we would practice on the same field. We had kind of a little there was probably 60 or 70 kids between the two teams. And so getting to know all those kids that well, like I've never coached, as a varsity coach, freshmen before, but I was coaching these kids from the day they entered the school. And so I felt like as we went from, 9th and 10th to the next year, we had originally the original thing was the next year you might play an independent schedule. And then, we ended up in the Metro League just because of logistics of the state scheduling. So we ended up playing a varsity schedule with no seniors. And, that was challenging. But, again, we had kind of that foundation with these kids. And I think, being able to really know them, they know you, I think that was hugely beneficial. And then that first year that we had 4 grades, 2019, we went to the third round of the playoffs, and it was really, really fun to be with that group. And again, they were the juniors and seniors had heard, myself and the other coaches for 3 years. So there really was a real tight knit piece to that. So that was a part I really enjoyed. I think, again, logistics, I think if anything are what they are, but I would say like establishing a culture, I think is the thing that really, I think everywhere I've been, I've tried to do that. And I think that, doing that from a place where you're walking in, they don't know you, you don't know them, and kind of starting off, it's pretty exciting, but also there's bumps in the road, and there's setbacks and things that you have to learn. But I think it was a pretty awesome process, really. It wasn't always awesome when you're, playing, our first game as varsity program was against Jesuit. It was a power, and we didn't have it. They're physical to begin with, and we don't have any seniors, and so it's we took a few lumps there. But one of the finest, I guess our finest hour might have been we won our last 3 games that season, which really springboarded. We were 0-6, and it wasn't always pretty, and then we were able to win 3 at the end. Kind of not the prettiest football ever played, but we got the wins, and that really launched us. I think the belief in, this kind of the messaging can work. So that was cool.
Talk a little bit about that messaging and just being able to get those guys to keep perspective, knowing that there was going to be bumps along the road, that you guys are going to be playing a tough schedule. Like, how did you keep everyone in line, even though you guys started off 0-6?
Right. I think that you have to focus on, so I felt like our message wasn't going to be, we're going to score 28 points. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. Our message to them consistently was, and you can ask them, is like our goal every week was to out-scrap the other team. We're going to out-hustle the other team. Now, we didn't say we're going to win. We said we are not walking on and off the field. We're going to sprint on the field, sprint off the field. We're going to, everything that we can control, we are going to be all about. And so I think breaking it down into that kind of thing, I think was big. And again, they took pride in that. I really think one of the moments that I always remember about that year was we were playing Southridge High School, which is the closest high school to Mountainside. And they had a really good senior class that year. And so we're playing them with no seniors. And they punished us. They were licking their chops. I believe it went to a running clock toward the end of the third quarter. And it was, at that point, it was 49-7. But, and they started subbing, get the running clock thing going. But we actually put together 2 scoring drives. Okay. And it wasn't like fluke. It was like, it was, 10, 12 play drives, and we scored twice. And when we scored, the energy on our sideline was amazing. It wasn't like fake, it wasn't like fake emotion. It was like it was important to them. And so they sort of ended up being 49-21, but I felt like even in some of the losses, you could feel this thing building. And I remember thinking after the game, like, they got us today, but this thing is swinging in our direction for sure. And I think that was one thing. I think another big one is, as a coach, I really think a team becomes a reflection of their coach. So I think we really had to be very mindful about keeping great body language. We couldn't be shaking our head. We couldn't be like showing frustration, because as soon as we do that, then they're going to feel that. And then they're going to get frustrated with each other. They're going to start, having bad body language. So we were really mindful about, regardless of what was happening, now on the inside, you might be freaking out, but on the outside, our outward messaging and appearance had to be, we're fine. We're going to be fine, and I think that was a big one, and getting him through was, I guess those two things maybe I think would be focus on what we can control. And again, how much you hustle is not exactly tangible, but you can feel it though, you can feel it. And I think that was something that, I told our O-line, like, we're going to block to the whistle. And again, they might not like it, but we're going to give effort all the way till the end. And I think starting with something like that, I think helped us. And then when you go from 0-6 and you get a win, then it was like, wow, and then it was like, we got 2 wins and 3 wins. And so then I think it really helped a kind of a belief system of like, we could do stuff. And so the next year, right, when I first had seniors, we were 6-3 in our regular season, which was awesome. We made the playoffs, and we played Clackamas, who had been in the semifinals and won the championship the previous 2 years of 6A. And it was our first playoff game. We beat them, and it was, again, not the prettiest, but we just kind of did our thing. And then the next week we played Tiger. They were number 1 in the state. We were 16 seed, and we beat them in overtime. And we were behind, but there was this kind of this resilience about the group that I felt like a lot of it was kind of born in the first, really hard year. There was a lot that came out of that, of like, we can be resilient, we can get through this stuff. And I think that was really big for our guys.
No, I like that, Coach. Thanks for sharing that. Why do you coach? What's the why
Why do I
behind getting
coach?
into coaching?
I think that coaching and in teaching as well, it's an exhausting job. And it's one that, it's taxing, just emotionally taxing, but I really believe that the relationships you make and the impact that you can have is immeasurable. And I think that, I've been very fortunate to everywhere I've been to have, players that, where there's a really strong mutual respect. And I think that starts with building a good relationship with the kids, both in the classroom and on your team. You have to have an authentic relationship with the kids. And when you have that, then anything's possible. And I think that allows you to coach them hard. That allows you to, and I would often tell them, hey, I'll tell you when it's good and I'll tell you when it's not good, kind of thing. But you can only do that if they know that you really care about them. So I think one of the blessings of my career really is like being able to interact with so many young people, who are in all different points of good, bad, or, hurting or whatever, and being able to really feel like, you're someone that they can, look to, and you can give guidance to, and you can have an impact on. I think it's a really pretty awesome, thing as an educator and a coach. And one of the things that I've always really maybe felt most proud, I don't know if that's the right word, but I've always been proud of, is that many of the players from going all the way back 20 plus years that I'm still in closest contact with today are guys that hardly ever played on Friday night. They're guys that were in the program. It was important to them. They were great guys. And what we did was important. It was something that really meant a lot to them and the others. And that I think feels good.
Yeah. I like asking this because I know it's coming up for me here soon. I got a daughter that's 4 and a son that's 2. And, I do want to be involved and coach them to some degree. But tell us a little bit about the dynamics of coaching your own kids.
No, honestly, I think it was amazing. It's not easy. And I think that, one of the things in both cases with Sean in Pleasanton, my boys are 12 years apart, right? So, And, I mentioned like family being a big part of what I've done forever. So like Sean was on our sidelines at Foothill when he was like 7 years old, and he was at practice. And so he was around our coaches, like they were like second parents to him growing up. And so when he became a player at Foothill, it was familiar. I had been there for many years, so it wasn't like I just swooped in to coach because my kid was on the team. But I think that it was a really positive thing. My first year, so if you want a short story on this, so I became head coach in 2007. Matt Sweeney had stepped down. His daughter had actually was a soccer player at University of Oregon. In the previous year, she was a freshman on their soccer team, played a ton, did great, but he really couldn't get to the games. And so he stepped down late in May. So I became the head coach in late May of 2007. Sean had been on the freshman team, had been the starting quarterback in the freshman team. Our senior had graduated, so now we're going to kind of be looking for a quarterback. Going into the summer, I was like, well, I don't want to, the last thing I need to do now is have my son involved in all this. I said, we have a junior to be a senior and a sophomore who was a JV guy. They'll be with the varsity. Sean will be at the JV. And so that's kind of how it went all summer. He wasn't with us at all. And, we were just coaching and getting ready. And literally between those two guys, the junior quarterback eventually by like middle of camp kind of had asserted himself as he was going to be our starter. And so then the senior, okay, great kid, good player. I said, hey, why don't you, we're going to go with Cameron, but you're going to help us somewhere. So maybe we'll get you at linebacker, running back. So he goes to those, the next day he's practicing with the linebackers and turns his ankle pretty badly. Right. So he's on crutches and all that. So it's like, ah, crap. So then we have a jamboree, and this is Labor Day weekend, and our junior quarterback throws like 3 or 4 touchdowns in the jamboree, does great. There was no contact on the quarterback. And so he like, all right, we're going to our first game the next week. We're good to go. It's Labor Day Monday. I meet with the team. I go over the scouting report. I tell him to go to the locker room and go change. And the junior kid comes up to me and goes, hey, coach, my back hurts. I can't practice today. I went to the doctor. They said I can't practice today. And I'm like, oh, God. So then I'm like, we need a quarterback to have a practice. So I call home and I say, we got to get Sean up here just as we can run a practice. So he came up, practiced with the team, was fine, just so we can run our stuff. So then, okay, got through that day. We're fine. Next day at school, this kid comes into my office in the afternoon and says, hey, coach, I'm out for the year with my back. I'm out for the year. And I'm like, oh, geez. So now we have a game in 3 days, got no quarterback. Sean practiced 1 day. So we're going to, kind of run it out. We're going to have to kind of crash course him, which we did. And so he played that. So my first game as a head coach, he was our quarterback. He only practiced with us for like 3 days. Yeah. And so.
Did you guys get the W?
We did not get the W. We played a team that went to the state in California, but it was a very good game. And Sean played actually really well. And but it was like, again, long-winded way of saying that in that situation, we both kind of got chucked in the fire through circumstance together. And so I think there was something about that was pretty healthy.
Yeah.
But I think that then, my younger boy, Brian, years later, he was a 3-year starter. So I think that for me as a dad, it was awesome. I think it's stressful. It adds a level of stress.
Yeah.
But I think, I think it's important, whoever you're going to have as your quarterback or whatever, that it's a fair process and that everyone can see that it's fair. And then, but I think it's really enjoyable. I mean, but I also think that it adds, and you'll feel it, a little bit. Every parent loves their kid and they should. But when you're kind of coaching and you're being a dad too, I mean, can be a delicate situation, but I'm completely grateful to have that opportunity, have had that opportunity.
Yeah. I just got, I had a conversation a couple of weeks back with a volleyball coach from Hawaii, a guy that I kind of grew up with his kids or competing against his kids. And he had 5 boys, and all 5 of them ended up playing Division I volleyball.
There you go.
Just kind of all over, mainly California. And then I think at University of Hawaii. But right. He was saying, like, when it comes to those dynamics, one of the things that helped him, he developed this system. He just called it BREAD. It was called BREAD. It stood for breaking records every day.
Yeah.
So whatever their drills were that day,
yeah, they
would set a number.
Yeah.
And whether it be like pepper, so I'm just bumping back and forth with the person across me or across the net, right. And they had to hit X amount of numbers. And it was cool because he developed it, and it was a kind of bulletproof way, like, okay, yeah, his sons are really freaking good.
Right.
but
Kind of a
they
metric.
they
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
they have a metric and something that's measurable where he
Right.
can point to, be like, okay, this is what we did, right? And
Right.
our sons are succeeding under this
Right.
framework here. So these are good players.
No, that's cool. I mean, and one other thing too, I guess that one of my buddies said to me, about it too, was that every kid, no matter how good, or they're going to have rough practices, and they'll make mistakes, and that kind of thing. But his comment was, you can't let your demeanor change based on how Sean's practicing. So
Yeah.
if he's having a rough practice, you have to be the same. You can't be, you know, edgy or mopey, or like, you have to, you're coaching a team of kids, you're coaching 50 guys. You can't, I think I did a good job of that, but it was a good reminder, like, yes, he's my son, so there's obviously that level, but like, you can't ride the wave of, he's having a great practice, I'm all pumped, he's having a hard practice, I'm shaking my head and kicking rocks. You have to be real steady. And I think
Yeah.
that comes back kind of that thing of a team's a reflection of their coach. You want your team to have that good resilience and kind of good look on their face, and you have to model that as a coach.
Yeah. You talked about culture a little bit when you're talking about Mountainside and some of the other stops that you were at. Tell me some of the values that are important to you and values that are important to your teams when you're coaching them.
When so value wise, I think one of the things, I kind of mentioned is, be great at the things you can control. I think that's a huge thing. Like so much of what we do, especially as a high school coach. I mean, your quarterback's dad gets a job transfer and he's moving to, Michigan. You can't, as much as that stings, you have to really keep everybody's eyes on what can we control. And I say, what's our attendance in summer weights? I would put it on a wall. I'd put attendance on the wall. Like, we control that. How well do we know the scouting report? We control that. It has nothing to do with how good of a football player you are. The effort level that I give, we control that. So I think that was a big one, was this idea that that be great at what you can control. The other thing I would often say is that the little things matter. The little stuff matters. So how we leave a locker room on the road matters. Some custodian is going to come in and they're going to see this place spotless, and they're going to say, you know what, that's going to reflect on us, right? How you treat the officials matters. How you treat one another matters. So I think, really, I think that was a big one, is that, all the little things we do, I would often tell them, everything you do in life is a reflection of yourself. Doesn't mean it's always going to be great, but I mean, the things that you want people to look and say, you know what, like, and even on a football field, there's plenty of teams that maybe aren't good teams physically, but you look at them, you look at the way they warm up, you look at the way they leave the field, you look at the way they shake hands after the game, and you can see, like, these guys are doing it right, and I think if you start with that, and then you get better, you develop your players, you get, then it's going to take off. So I think that was a big one for sure. And I'm really big on, respect your opponent. I think the word respect gets kicked around a lot, but I think we were always very competitive, but I always wanted us to do it the right way. And it was like, I don't, regardless of who we're playing, we're going to respect that team, and I would tell them, especially if it's a team that's not very good, because I would say, I respect these guys more than anybody. I mean, these guys are 0-8. They're not very good. They're getting drummed every week. How easy would it be to just say, screw it, football sucks?
Yeah.
Yet these dudes over here
showing up, baby.
They're showing up. So, like, you know what? We're gonna play our hardest, but we're gonna be completely respectful of these guys. So I think those are the sorts of things. I don't know if that's exactly answering your question.
No, it does.
But I think, I guess the other one is just, I wanted them, I said, we have to support one another, right? We have to support our team. So we're, if a guy gets knocked on his butt in a drill, we're not laughing, we're helping him up. So I think we're going to support one another, because I say, it's going to get hard. This is not, it's going to get hard. And so when it gets hard, this thing will splinter apart if you don't truly support each other every day leading up until when it gets hard. So I think that was another big one.
Yeah, I like that, Coach. Going back to saying, what you do on the field is a lot of times a reflection of yourself. It just brought me back to Coach Vaughn. I'm sure you heard of Coach Vaughn, the defensive coordinator, head softball coach at Linfield.
Oh yeah.
So he was my defensive coordinator. Love him to death, admire him. respect the hell out of him. But I got him on an interview, and one of the things he said was, like, if we ask you to go get, equipment out of the shed or put equipment back and you leave that place looking like crap, like, you just signed that thing as a personal signature that, hey, my name's not Jake or my name's not Keanu, my name is crap. This is what, this is who I am. This is the product that I am.
Agreed.
And the other thing was, I worked with a gentleman at Oregon he was Coach Peterson's personnel guy, director of player personnel when he was at Washington.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that stuck with me that he said was, I can tell who you are by what you put on film. And it was exactly like what you were talking about earlier, as far as just being scrappy and, how you run on and off the field. If the play's away, what are you doing?
Yep.
So I thought that was really cool.
And I think Coach Vaughn, one of the things, and I've never really met him personally. My son played as a freshman, and I have coaches on my staff who played at Linfield, and they spoke super highly of him. But one thing that I think I really have always believed is, if you're a good teacher and you're a good coach, you can thrive in any sport. You look at him, right? I mean, he's a award-winning football coach, and his softball team, I don't know if they've won the national. I think they won the national.
He's got 2 national championships.
So, there you go. I mean, and I think, you're coaching guys, you're coaching girls, you coach 2 different sports, but I guarantee both those teams would probably describe him the same, as a consistent, hard-nosed guy that's totally dialed in. So I think that, but I agree. I think everything, and that's why, I would, show my offensive linemen. I was coaching offensive line. They were always responsible for bringing the bags out to practice and putting the bags away. And I did just I told them just what you said. I said, this is how it should look each day. And that became a kind of a battle cry for those guys. They took pride in the fact that our equipment room was dialed. The bags were lined up. They were stacked just so, because that sort of thing matters. And the other thing I would often tell our players is, you don't just suddenly become consistent on a Friday night. If you're not consistent, if you're inconsistent in the classroom, if you're here and there, if you're not consistent, it's not suddenly going to happen on a Friday night. But if you're consistent about everything you do, including something like, hey, how we put the bags away is important, we're going to do it right, that is going to translate into not jumping off sides in the fourth quarter. That's going to translate to, we don't have to take a timeout because we only have 10 guys on the punt team. If you're dialed in, you're kind of dialed in all the time. So that was a real important point of emphasis.
Yeah. If you could sit down and ask any coach a question, who would the coach be, and what would that question be?
Oh, man, that's a good one. I mean, I really like listening to coaches talk. I mean, I've always gone to a ton of football clinics, and I think there's always just little things you can pick up. So, I mean, I actually just interviewed Pat Casey last week, who I've admired as an amazing, amazing baseball coach, but just a disciplined guy. And so, I mean, I really, asked him, how are your teams so fundamental and so disciplined all the time? I mean, as an example, I guess I grew up in the Bay Area. I was always a huge fan of the 49ers. And so Bill Walsh, I think, was always a coach that I thought was just amazing. I did hear him speak a couple times when he was at Stanford, but I think what I would ask is, how do they meld their team? What's kind of the secret sauce of why some teams are so cohesive, and it's, I think it's that to me is really the magic. Is like, some coaches just have that ability, and you can just watch their teams play and you can just see the level of just cohesiveness. And I think that's a real skill. And I'm always interested in, trying to find out what that is. And it's not the same answer for everybody, I'm sure, but I don't know if that exactly answers your question. But I think, I'm a big admirer I love watching coaches do coach. I think that's a kind of a lost art of think I would go, and one of my college buddies was a very good junior college basketball coach near where I lived in Pleasanton. And so every December, January, I would go down and watch a couple practices, just because he's a good coach, and I would just watch and listen and kind of see what he did. I think that's such an advantage, is to just watch other guys do it and be open to seeing what they do, even the littlest of things. Tom Holmoe was the head coach at Cal. He was a player for the 49ers. He actually coached with Bill Walsh, and he was talking at a football clinic, and he said this thing. He said, if you tolerate it, you encourage it. He was talking about DB drills, and he said, if you tolerate it, you encourage it, meaning if a guy has poor technique or doesn't do something right and you let it go, then he's going to do it again for sure. But that little statement I found like it's been so applicable to so many things.
Yeah.
If a kid shows up late to practice, well, if you tolerate it, they're surely going to do it again. Now, that's not to say you need to be a jerk all the time, but the point is like that was just such a little throwaway line he used. So I think for me, it's not so much one coach. I feel like any coach. I feel like if I watch someone, I'm always looking for takeaways, and I really do enjoy that.
Yeah. Did you call it when you were at Mountainside? Were you the OC as well, or?
Yes, I was. I mean, I was for the first 4 years, and then Jordy Romick took over the last couple of years.
Jordy.
And so, and really, when I was an assistant coach at Foothill for all those years, and even at Milpitas, I was, I guess you'd say a defensive coordinator. I mean, I feel like a coach is a coach, but I called the defense for, many, many, many years. And then when I became the head coach at Foothill, then I called the offense. And really my main rationale on that was, I think, at least in high school football, like, the play caller is like the second guesser's delight, right? So every parent can like, oh, they should have done this. So like if anyone was going to get criticized, I wanted it to be me.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my motivation to call offense. And so then I did that. And then when I came to Silverton, I kept doing it. And then at Mountainside, like I said, in about the 2021, 2022 seasons, Jordy did it, which was awesome. But yeah, I didn't. And again, not that I'm a student of it all and I studied it all. And, I feel like I had a, fairly effective offenses, but it was kind of just out of sort of, I wanted to be the guy with the target. If someone's getting second guess, I wanted it to be me. So.
I like that. That's cool. For one formation challenge. So the one formation challenge, you can only go into a game running one formation. You can motion, but it can't go from a 3x1 set to a 2x2 set. What's the formation and why?
Well, this is where I get in trouble a little bit. Cause like for me, my thing was always like, I wanted to be as simple as I could, but also have the ability to do some stuff. When I was probably the best formation I had as a play caller. Now this wouldn't probably, I don't know if it would be today, but I like to have it with under center. Yeah. We got a tight end and a wing, tight end and then a wing, 1x1 off the tight end, and then two backs, either with the full back and either the back to the wing or the back away from the wing.
Yeah.
And I think that in high school football created a lot of issues for defenses. Because I think when you have a tight end and a wing, number one, people aren't really sure where to line their defensive end up. Yep. If they line them up inside eye of the tight end, then you would just toss. If they line them up outside or head up or outside, you could run, off tackle. If you had a good receiver, you'd have him over by himself. And if they wanted to double, then that's pulling a guy out of the box. So I guess that was kind of simple. I'm sure my coaching buddies.
Yeah, old school, huh?
They would laugh
formation.
But I think that was a real effective one for me. I think whatever you do as a play caller, you want to understand, how to attack people. And I think that over time I kind of understood, and again, it wasn't flashy, it wasn't, but we scored a lot of points and, it allowed us to kind of, and the other thing is, I think that whatever you do, you should have the ability to either run or throw, especially in high school football, because you don't know the hand you're going to be dealt. That first year I was at Foothill as a head coach calling the offense. We had, two guys go over 1,000 yards, one
rushing
of them
or receiving?
Rushing. Two guys went over 1,000 yards rushing. And then 2 years later, we had a quarterback throw for 3,500 yards. And it was the same, quote unquote offense, but it was versatile enough that would allow you to kind of play to your strength. So I guess that was kind of the biggest thing is always, and I think that for me, my comfort level with that, strong formation with a tight end wing and a wide out, and then the two backs was kind of my comfort zone, I guess.
No, I like that.
As old school as that might be, but
no, it's good. That's good. I like that. You know what? I was a defensive line GA. I was kind of out of the water for the first couple months there for Coach Lange here at Oregon State.
Right.
But you know what give us our edge players fits was inverted wings. And as far as who to key, where your eyes should be, where you're taking your strike to, where is your alignment. That one was always awkward. Just inverted wing.
And one of the funny things too that I found with this offense that we were running is I'd say by when when Chip Kelly was with, well, especially when we came to Oregon, right? Chip Kelly's with the Ducks, and they were doing their thing, and so everybody started going to the spread, which it was obviously super successful for the Ducks, but like we kept with this like under center tight end, one or two tight ends, tight end wing, and like it became kind of like they would see this versions of the spread every week, and then they'd play us, and they're like, oh man, it was actually kind of
it was almost like what Air Force is right now with the
yeah,
with the
it almost
triple.
became a bit of like something that they didn't see week to week, whereas they were seeing the 2x2, 3x1, shotgun, perimeter screen, all that kind of stuff. So I think that ironically became kind of something that was not something that everybody was defending very much. So it kind of helped that way too.
Well, if you look at San Diego State when they had Pumphrey, and then you look at Oregon State when they had, I can't remember if it's Jaquiz or James, but it's like when you're lining up in those condensed sets with big bodies and you got a small back, it is hard,
it's really
especially
hard.
if your linebackers are key in the back. I mean, it is hard to fit that.
No,
It is
it's
hard
very
to fit
hard.
that.
And I think, and I think really, if we're talking like offensive, whatever your system is, I think just, again, everybody like kind of talks about simplicity, but I think the better your players understand what you're asking them to do, you'll have a chance. I think where, the whole, like, sometimes you'll scout a team and it'll be like, jack of all trades, master of none kind of thing, where they're hodgepodging so much stuff that you can kind of see that there's really the players aren't really too good at any of them. I think, and again, year to year it can change in high school football, but coming up with, here's our sort of base operation. And from day one of spring practice, we'd run the fullback trap. Here's how we block the trap. We could run the trap for days, run the trap. Then we go the outside game, so I think just having a system that you can teach in a way that your players will be really grounded in it, I think is a big deal. I mean, I had, one of my guys, my last year at Silverton, right? He was a junior. He was a guard for us. And he was a really great young man, was a kind of a self-made player, wasn't terribly talented, but total team guy. And so we, whenever I coached the O-line, and it was always like, trapping left shoulder left, trapping right shoulder right, just so they would, little cues. So he dislocates his elbow. He was like, we were beating a team pretty badly. It was our last home game. And, he dislocates his elbow pretty badly, and he goes, he has to be taken up to the Silverton hospital. So after the game, we win the game, and team's out, and I'm going to stop by and see him. And I go in there, and his mom's there and his sister. He's kind of looped out. They had to kind of put him under to fix his, get his elbow back in this place. And he looks at me and goes, "Hey coach, left shoulder left. I made the trap. I trapped left shoulder left." So I was kind of like, as a coach, I'm like, yes, this guy's half out of it under the influence of these painkillers, and he's reciting our offensive line blocking rules. So I think point
That's
being,
buy-in.
like,
That's buy-in right there.
That's buy-in. And I think whatever your offense is should suit your skill set of your team, but also your players should be so grounded in it that it allows you to, that's where you get good. I think if you're doing too much and none of it very well, and there's confusion, then it's a problem. What
is a drill that you guys did at Mountainside or later in your career that you wish you did sooner?
A drill
or team period?
I think a team period. Well, one of the things I think is, that I felt like you had to do a lot. We called it Blitz period with our O-line, but picking up the blitzes. I think
kind of a walkthrough tempo, or what was?
Yeah, well, we would do it differently. We would do it, a version of it every day. The first day would be walkthrough tempo. Tuesdays would usually go a little bit kind of do some one-on-ones, and then do it with blitzers. But I think that coaching O-line all these years, well, that was another thing, like I learned from Matt Sweeney at Foothill, was he said, when you become a head coach, you should coach the offensive line. He said, because if that doesn't work, nothing's working. And so that, again, the idea that if it's not working, look in the mirror, you're the one coaching them. So, but I think from coaching offensive line for so many years, I think picking up blitzes and, the fronts moving, defensive line stemming. I mean, there's just the physical part of making a successful pass block is that's a skill set of its own. But then you throw on top of it, who's blocking who, how are we, fanning one way or the other? How are we communicating? Who's picking up who? So I think, blitz period for me, I think is critical, in terms of a team drill. So I think that's one that, I think can't be, again, you can't beat your guys up, but it can't be done, too often. The other thing that we would do, and I got this from Matt Sweeney at Foothill, and that is when we would then go to like 11 on 11, like we'd do an offensive period, right? We would have, so if we were running our passing game against our scout defense, we would have two, let's say we're playing a 4-4, we would have two guys with arm shields standing in front and then two guys behind them, so that we would have blitzers every play. And then our quarterback would have to throw into, 7 guys dropping every play. Yeah. The idea being that practice should be harder than the game, so that our O-line was facing maximum pressure and our quarterback was having to throw into maximum, zone coverage or whatever it would be. So I think that was another trick to kind of make practice harder than the game. So that way when the game came around, it was easier. If you want another quick funny story on that was,
did the QBs like that drill? The QBs got to have been like, oh, that's not fair, coach.
And it made for some really rough periods. Yeah. Real rough. But
coach, we got to be instilling confidence, man. We got to be instilling confidence.
But, well, here's one. So the other one was, I'm kind of an impatient guy, right? So when I was at Foothill, like we had these like practice, everybody had a white practice jersey, and we had those, they called them pennies, like the vest, you'd put them on and take them off and all that. And so one day and I wanted all of our scout guys to rotate like every couple plays. I don't want people staying on the sidelines. So it got like crazy with like the vests. So at one point I just was like, no more vests. We're not wearing, it takes too damn long to like change them and trade them. Nope, we're not using vests anymore. Everybody's just going to wear their practice jerseys. So again, for your quarterback, everybody's got white on, right? So we go to our first game that year, and our quarterback was actually Sean, my son. He comes over to the sideline. I think it was our first game. He throws like a couple touchdown passes, and we're kind of rolling. And he kind of comments. He goes, "Hey, it's a lot easier when they're wearing different colored jerseys." So it was like,
no doubt,
kind of stumbled into it. It wasn't thinking that way. I was thinking more just I wanted practice to be more efficient, and we ended up, hey man, it made practice a little harder. So, yeah. But I think, again, I love practice more than the games. I think that's where a lot of the magic happens. But as far as drills, I was always looking to come up with something. But I think everything you did had to apply to, it had to be game applicable. I would tell our players, I'm not going to ask you to do anything, any kind of drill that won't directly translate to the game. Yeah. We're going to focus on what the skills we need to develop to help you be successful on a Friday night.
Yeah. To your point though, I think there's so much merit. We did it at Oregon State and Boise too, is just switching up offense and defensive colored jerseys.
Yeah.
Right. So your QB's eyes can adjust. And not only that, but you're changing the setting of practice, whether you're on the practice field or especially in the stadium. Because I know for me, I didn't play at the Division I level, but I play pick up hoops all the time. And if the backdrop is different, for whatever reason, it fucks with my psyche. And, my shot might be a little different.
Yeah, no, for sure. No, I think as a coach, I think that's one of the things that you want to, and everybody's got different facilities or different, but coming up with thinking outside the box as far as, are there things I can do to change it up in a way that's going to help them be ready for the Friday night, whether it be, whatever that might be. But I think, I think making practice harder, than the game. I think you want the game to them to just play and them to feel free and it almost feel easier. But again, you have to blend that with, like you said, getting your guys some confidence too.
Yeah. Why is football the greatest sport in your opinion?
My opinion, the reason I think it's the greatest sport is because I think the level of unselfishness that's required. I think really if one guy, it requires 11 guys, offense, defense, special teams, to all be in sync and to all be willing to share in quote unquote the glory. You're an offensive lineman. You're asking a guy to never touch the ball. You're asking a guy to probably never get his name called, but you're asking a guy to do something that if he doesn't do it and do it well, then the other guys aren't going to get credit either. So I just love the level of unselfishness that's required. I also love the fact, how really you're literally getting knocked down on the ground, and the level of resiliency that you can learn from playing football, having to get back on your feet literally and do it again, I think it serves players so well. When they leave your team, that they've learned to become resilient and have that, I'm going to get up and I'm going to keep going. And I think the other thing, I guess, lastly, I would say is, I think high school football allows a player to make himself a valuable member of the team. Even if they're not terribly athletic, even if they're not, 240 pounds, they can bust their butt in the weight room. They can be at every single practice. They can be totally invested, and they can find a way to have a role on your team. And it can be one that, that you don't win championships without guys like that. Maybe they're the wing back on the PAT team. Maybe they're the guy that's.
Oh, that's one of the worst jobs.
Yeah. No, but I mean, but you need it.
Just the iron cross, baby, and just
if
exposing
if you don't have it right, it's gonna, but or the guy that can like block his butt off at wide receiver. Maybe he's not fast. Well, if you're running a bubble screen, you're gonna have that guy in there to block.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's a guy that can, you name it. I think I've always felt fortunate that football allowed for so many ways for a guy to like be part of what's happening. And I think that, and they can kind of almost will, like if you can't shoot a basketball, it's going to be hard to have a role on a basketball team, right? You can't hit a baseball. You just don't have the hand-eye coordination. Like it's going to be hard, but in football, you can really carve out a really good career and become a factor, where in a lot of other sports, that's just not the case. I mean, you have to have a certain level of just natural ability, whereas obviously that helps in football too, don't get me wrong, but there's a route for guys to really work themselves into a good spot.
No, that's a great point, Coach, and kind of right on par with, I interviewed Coach Matheson. He's at Camas, and one of the first things he says was, it doesn't eliminate people.
Right.
So exactly what you're just saying, like everyone can find a role, everyone can find value. So definitely a powerful thing. Prefaced you before we got on.
Yep.
The Anela question of the day. This one's kind of out of left field. It was, what's your favorite fruit and vegetable?
Favorite fruit and vegetable.
We had broccoli tonight, so that kind of
yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. Well, first of all, I love fruits and vegetables. So I got a lot to choose from here, but I would say vegetable wise, you mentioned broccoli. I think broccoli is right at the top of my list. I love a lot of vegetables, but I think broccoli or tomatoes probably would be the front runners on the veggie side. And then on the fruit side, man, I mean, I like seasonally. You
probably didn't expect to talk about fruit and vegetables.
No, I love it. I mean, seasonally, I like watermelon in the summer. I like hammering oranges right now. Blueberries. I got a couple of blueberry bushes in the backyard. Love blueberries. So no, I think I'd probably stick with some of the stuff mentioned there as my favorite, but I would say if I could have a fruit salad every morning, I'd be a happy man. So
okay, I like that. From the Bay Area, are you a Niners fan? I know you mentioned the Niners. Are you a big Niners fan?
I was a Niners. I mean, I guess I am a Niner. I mean, I wasn't. Yeah, growing up a Niners fan, big time. I was in 8th grade in '81 when they won their first Super Bowl. And so really from 81, being a middle schooler to 94, I mean, that was my formative years. They were, 5 Super Bowls in there, and they were always at the top. So I was a 49er fan for sure growing up. Nowadays, not so much. I mean,
who are you rooting for now? You got to root for your son's team now?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I was fortunate that, my son was, drafted by the St. Louis Rams. So I followed the Rams, and really part of it was like, as a coach, I was always so busy on Sundays, I could really only kind of watch one game. So I followed the Rams, and he was on the Vikings, and he was with the Packers coaching the last couple of years. And so now the Eagles. So I'm sure I'll be watching some Eagles games for sure.
There you go. Well, if you're a Niners fan, you got to be feeling pretty good about some of the guys you guys acquired in the offseason.
Yeah.
You got Mike Evans going over there.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was clickbait. I don't know if the other Bosa brother is joining. I don't know if I got clickbaited there, but
I don't know. Yeah, no, they have a good, they have a good team. They weirdly had so many injuries.
Yeah.
They're always competitive. I think the NFC is just a competitive deal. I mean, honestly, one thing about the NFL that I think, and I love all sports, I follow it all, but I like the fact that the NFL is really designed for parity. When it comes to like the draft, there's a salary cap. Even the scheduling, right? If you come in last, play last place schedule. I mean, it's kind of made for teams to, kind of rise up, and then, teams going up and down. But no, I think it's exciting. I just enjoy just watching, good teams play. So
yeah. What does the word team mean to you?
Word team means to me that I'm going to be working with other people. We're all going to be, striving for a common goal. We're going to have to count on the person next to us. We're going to have to be willing to go the extra mile for the person next to us. And we're going to have to, know that there's times when the person next to me is going to get the glory or have their moment, but that's part of what we're doing. And I think it kind of comes down to that sort of that unselfish mindset of I'm doing something that's maybe a little bit bigger than me, but I'm doing my role, whatever that is, and I'm going to be the best that I can, and I'm going to be a good teammate. I'm going to be there for the people around me, no matter what.
We talked a little bit earlier about, some of the values that were important to you. And, that first year you guys played a varsity schedule that you guys wanted to be scrappy.
Mm-hmm.
How do you go about actionable steps to create buy-in from a team building standpoint or from a team culture building standpoint?
I would say one thing that you have to treat every guy with equal value. You can't, and I'm not saying that you treat every player exactly the same, but what I'm saying is every kid in your program must feel valued. You have to build a relationship. You have to talk to them every day. You have to give them coaching points every day. So I think it starts off with the guys in your room believe that each and every one of them is important, and each and every one of them is getting coached, and each and every one of them is getting attention from the coach. And then I think that is a starting off point. Right. And then I think that kind of breeds sort of accountability within the players when they know, like, we're not, it's not like the best player can show up late. It's not like this guy doesn't have to come to practice, or this guy can get a personal foul and the coach isn't going to like pull him out of the game. I think if you're treating everybody the same in terms of what you expect, I think you get buy-in that way. I think when kids feel like you don't know their name, when kids feel like, oh, look, we were doing this DB drill and coach is giving 90% of his attention to those 2 guys, and the other 8 guys are over here working just as hard, and they're not getting anything. I think, and I think going back to like Foothill High School with Matt Sweeney, and I did it at Silverton and Mountainside, is like, you mentioned like actionable. Like one of the things is the helmet stickers, right? So we would give team stickers. So each week, if we won the game, everybody got a sticker. If we didn't have any turnovers on offense, everybody got a sticker. If we held the team to less than 150 yards, everybody got a sticker. And then if we had a special teams score or turnover, everybody got a sticker. And so everybody, and the reason for that is, I think, not that individual achievement is important, but I think, I didn't even look, and even as you mentioned, like being a parent, right? Like your kid's at practice every day. He goes to the weight room every, 6:30 in the morning all summer. Now they're on the sideline and he's standing there with 1 sticker and the dude next to him has got 15. I think like building this idea that we're all important and all valued, I think really creates buy-in. And I think consistency creates buy-in. You have to be consistent with how you approach the players and how you treat the players.
Yeah, no, that's good. One thing I like that Coach Smith did at Oregon State is if you made every practice through a spring ball or fall camp, you got a damn tough sticker that you got to put on your locker. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of cool to see.
No, for sure.
Who made it through all the practices?
No, I mean, I even think like in the summer, like the accountability piece, like we would have 6 weeks of weightlifting Monday through Thursday. And I would just have every kid's name, week 1, week 2, and I'd take roll and and it was like, there's guys that, and it was very rare. We had great attendance, but like if there's a guy that I'd bring him in and I say, hey man, like you tell me, look up there, this guy's been at like 17 workouts. You've been at 2. You tell me how that's going to work out here, And so I think it, kind of fostering that accountability. Now, again, the guy that was only at 2 workouts was probably not going to make it anyway, but it was like you mentioned, like actionable, tangible ways of like, you reckon like, damn tough sticker, like, well, you get that, dude, that's something you want to get because that shows you're kind of a badass. So
situation that you think gets overlooked in the game of football.
Special teams at a high school level, special teams. I think
that's what Coach Chris Newton said too.
I mean, I think that as a high school coach, you can make up so much ground if you play solid special teams. I'm not saying run back 8 kicks. I'm saying if you don't have to take a timeout, field position is such a deal. And like if you can kick it in the end zone in high school football, they have to take it on the 20, right? So when we were at Foothill, we had a guy that like kicked in the end zone like 18 times. So if a team's averaging like, starting on the 29, say, when they return it, if you put them on the 20 every 18 times, that's like 18 sacks. So like, I think But I just think putting an emphasis on special teams and being organized.
That's a good way to look at that. That's cool.
Yeah. In high school, absolutely. Kicking the end zone, it's like a sack. You're on the 20. And so I think that, having an emphasis on special teams at the high school level can really help a team, especially if you're not as talented, especially if, because I think, that's something that going all the way back, we've always put a big emphasis on special teams. So I think it really pays dividends. I mean, we won my last year at Mountainside. We won 3 games by 1 point. We were 9-2. We won 3 games by 1 point. We didn't miss a PAT all season, and we blocked 6. Like that's, absolutely transferable to, if we aren't that successful on both sides of that, we probably are not 9-2. We might be, I don't know, whatever, 6-5 or 7-4. But I think special teams, is a situation that is huge.
I agree. I have this theory, and I'm going to make sure it's going to take flight at some point, maybe 5 years, maybe 10 years from down the road. But field goal block to you, is that a defensive play?
I think that's a defensive play.
So in my opinion, I think from a special teams coordinator standpoint and from a defensive coordinator standpoint, I see punt return as a defensive play.
Yeah.
And just being on the other side of it, I think that's where you get a lot of your most errors when it comes to special teams and substitutions is on punt return team. So to me is like, and half the time, if they're in plus territory or they're close to the 50, you're leaving your defense out there anyways.
Oh yeah.
So you're playing a safe defense. And I think there's a mentality when the punt team sees defensive safe team. Okay, and I think from the defense perspective too, like it's almost a playoff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, we're just making sure it's not a fake, then we're going to return the ball. But to me, if I'm a shield guy, and instead of putting, linebackers and defensive backs and wide receiver body types, let's keep in our edge rushers who are quote unquote our best takeoff guys. Right. Let's keep in our D linemen who are gonna threaten these body types because they feel like they got to put some sort of contact on them. And then if you're a shield guy, and I'm just generalizing here that most high schools are shield punt teams. Yeah. Like you don't want like I got Juju Schuster at Jacob Schuster at Oregon State. He's 340. Right. And if he had some intent and wanted to just F up the shield, and then you look at high school, like what's the block point in high school? Like in college, they're catching at 14, 15. Oh yeah. But the block point's really at 11. And we were shields or heels at 8 yards or 7 yards. Right. So you talk about blocks occurring or just speeding up the punter's process.
Oh yeah. No, I totally think that. The other thing in high school, when we started to see that is we would call it like in this, when I'm going through, I'd say they got the big boned punt team, so they have the 3 big guys, they have the punter. And I said, well, right there, they only have, 7 guys to cover, right? Did I lose you there?
And one of them's the long snapper. No disrespect to the long snapper.
What we would do is we would keep a regular defense in there, and we would just set up a block. We would say we're going to double team the center once he releases. We're gonna double team the 2 guys on the edge, and we're just going to man block the other 2. And so like if we saw that alignment, that setup, we would and we would also go for blocks depending on their personnel. But no, I think that's a great call. I think, and even PAT block, I think it's something that we worked on every day, and I think it paid dividends. And literally,
well, 6 blocks is crazy.
6 blocks. We were playing Westview, and they had a phenomenal running back a couple years back. He's at Davis now, but it was back and forth. We were up by 6 with about 2 minutes to go, and they went down and scored with like 15 seconds left, and we blocked the PAT to send it to overtime. And so then we go to overtime. We go on defense first. They get the ball. They score with this running back, right? Well, then I think probably because we just blocked their PAT, they said, screw it, we're going to go for 2. Yeah. We stopped them.
No, it changes dynamics of the game, man.
So then we get the ball, right? Our chance to be on offense. We score. We kick the PAT. We win. So it was like in the span of 10 minutes of time, the whole game changed on blocking a PAT and making a PAT. So I think there's a lot of value in that.
Yeah. And especially if you ain't got a dynamic returner.
No.
Like if you're just going to fair catch the ball. And I get it from a high school standpoint where you want to get kids reps and, special teams, a lot of times you can get kids into the game and they can add some value there. But if I'm a head coach, like I'm trying to minimize errors.
Errors.
I'm going to switch out my safety for my returner.
Yep.
And then I can scheme it up.
The thing about returners, again, another sort of pet peeve is catch the ball in the air. I don't care if you ever get a single return yard. If you catch the ball in the air, it's going to save, you probably have the stats from your coaching, but like whatever the hidden yardage on a ball hitting the ground is what, 12 yards, I don't know, however. But it's like, move your guy up, scout it out. The guy kicks it 25 yards in the air, line up at 25, catch it in the air, we're good, or 35 or whatever it is. But letting the ball hit the ground is another.
Not only that too, but from a time aspect, like you should see like how many end of half situations or 2-minute situations where, well, like you said, the returner doesn't catch the ball, or the punt team does a good job of putting it on the ground.
Yeah.
And then Coach Collins at Boise called it circle the wagons.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So you just, everyone lines up around it. Just wait till the ref blows the whistle. Yeah, and you can eliminate 5 seconds.
Oh, absolutely can. Absolutely can. No, it's great.
So, sorry, give me 1 second here. Aside from coaching, aside from winning, what other metrics do you use to define success as a coach? And I think you talked about it a little bit earlier with just being scrappy the first year, but is there anything else?
In terms of,
you can take it however you want to take it, on the field, off the field.
Aside from winning, really would be, do they leave my program better off because of it? Do they leave the program with, as a team player, as someone that, I think is kind of embracing the values that you've really wanted to instill in them, and I think, that can be, because really, in high school football, you can't at least where I've been, there's no recruiting going on. You kind of develop the kids you have, right? But like in some years, maybe you got a little more talent, some years not so much. But if they can leave and it's meant something to them, and you can tell that they're sad when it's over, and that they've come out of that, taken away with them some really important lessons, and you can see that they've really become into a real good person. I think that's the most important thing. The wins are the wins, the losses are the losses. And really that's why, I've always said, like, I really don't like the games that much, to be quite honest, but I love practice, because at practice is where these kind of relationships can be built. This hard work can be validated. It's where, you can really have, a lot of meaningful moments with your team is in practice.
Yeah.
Recognizing a guy that like has zero ability, but is busting his ass on the scout D line. You can, hey man, we cannot block Stoddard today. We can't block him. Stoddard, hell of a job right there. You are making us so much better. Right. And I think it allows for those sort of moments where your team can really, I think everybody can benefit. So
yeah.
I don't know if that's an answer, but
no, that is an answer.
But I think that just having them, and then I think that's probably the biggest task for us as coaches, is that we have the opportunity to make it a positive experience for everyone in our program. Again, we all want that positive experience to include a league title, playoff wins, but hopefully it happens. But if it doesn't, that doesn't matter. We still have to provide this experience where they leave your program feeling like they were involved in a worthwhile endeavor. They were involved in something that was meaningful and important, and they're better because of it.
That's good stuff, Coach. Is there anything that you would change about the game of football to enhance it? Could be on the field, could be landscape of high school football, college football, pro football.
I do.
I would love to see an NFL team run triple option. I know it would not be fun, but I would love to. And I know the NFL would probably be in qualms about that just from an injury standpoint. But you can't cut in the perimeter anymore. So.
Yeah, well, I guess on a micro level, I know one of my buddies in California always said that if the NFL could make one change, it would be to slow down the pass rush. Would be to allow O-linemen to release downfield early on screens, like in high school and college, where they can go downfield if it's caught behind line of scrimmage. Because right now they still have to be behind the line in the NFL. But I would say
there's got to be. I think that's twofold too. There's got to be some effectiveness with that too, because they can't get out early as far as just I guess the effectiveness of the play.
No, I agree. I think that. Just as things have evolved in the last years, obviously the professional is professional, but with college basically becoming, a version of professional football in a sense. And that kind of trickling down to like even high schools now where there's, kids moving from school to school. I just don't want it to lose the team aspect. And I think there's so much of football that can be learned from sticking it out, from if I'm not a starter as a freshman, I'm going to work my way into a position versus like, I want to go somewhere else, even at the high school level, like, I'm going to go to this school over here. And I just think I worry that mindset's seeping in a little bit or even a lot, maybe, especially at the college level where I think the beauty of football, one of the beauties of football is it's kind of a grind, and it's kind of a thing where, over the course of time, you can, like I said, you can kind of be resilient and kind of see it through and find that, reward of, a sense of accomplishment of, working your way up the ranks and earning something. And I think, in college and even in high school, there seems to be kind of people looking for a parachute out if things don't go right, just right away. And I think that's sort of against the grain of really what the sport's all about. But I mean, I don't know how you would regulate that but I think I worry more about the mindset of it.
Yeah. No, I do think there's some long-term effects that are, indirectly going to be correlated with that, as far as you talked about, stick-to-itiveness and sticking it out and, battling through adverse situations.
Right.
One of the things I talked with another coach about, we were just talking about college athletics at this point in time with NIL and players being compensated, which I fully agree with.
Right.
But the hard part is, I think the effects and the identity crisis of these athletes when they don't make it pro, and because they were able to make some or have some financial success in college, I think that effect is going to be compounded and maybe a little bit more drastic, as far as a guy just played, 2 years at LSU or Oregon State or Oregon, and, was making, 75 to 125 a season, kind of on the lower end, but now he's not going to make it to the pro. And now what does that look like? What does that kid's identity look like, where he just was sustainable and he was making money,
right?
Being an athlete?
No, I mean, I think that, I mean, I've when Sean was at Oregon State, and I saw kind of front row seat a little bit of like, you go to a bowl game and how much money was flowing through. I often said that the players should be compensated for sure. And I was never sure how, or what would be a fair way of doing it. But I felt like they deserve, there's so much money being made on these guys that they should be paid. I had always hoped that there would be some sort of a formula, because I can only imagine like how you're coaching in a building where, you've got 12 offensive linemen and one guy's making this and that guy's making that. And you're asking them all to do the same thing. You're asking them all to, some programs obviously make it work and thrive in that scenario. But I think, like I said, I think it kind of is chipping away a little bit at sort of the the real value of kind of that team piece. I don't know, because, how that is working out in locker rooms, but I think it's, and again, I'm not saying that they shouldn't get compensated, because they absolutely should for 100%, but I just don't know that the current sort of lack of any kind of parameters on it is really super healthy. And like I said, seeing that kind of trickle down to high school where, people are, transferring here and there, I think it's a little unhealthy too.
No doubt. Going back to your point just right there, it happens when I was still there. People, they called it pocket watching. This guy's making this much, but he's not contributing X on the field. I think I'm more of value than this player, but he's making more than me. So that's definitely tough right there. Definitely tough. But I appreciate your time, Coach. Is there any final advice on coaching, leadership team?
Like I said,
the community.
I think I first of all, thank you for your time. I've enjoyed this conversation, and it sounds like, you're doing a great thing. And I think, as a profession, we're looking for the next wave of guys. And I think it's very important what we do. And I think that having good people in there is critical, and whatever we can do to foster that kind of next group, because I think there's so much value in, football, but all sports and in whatever level. And I think, appreciate being able to talk about it. And, like I said, I appreciate, you doing what you're doing, and definitely have enjoyed being part of it.
Awesome, Coach. Well, I appreciate you, man.
I appreciate you. Thanks a lot. Take care.
Have a good night. See ya.
Good night.